Morning, beloveds. Welcome to Unity. I am Reverend Marla Mason. It's a blessing and a pleasure to serve as your minister today. I want to point out that our book of the month is Good Days Start with Gratitude Journal. It's a journal, not a reading. And I chose this because, for two reasons actually. One is that this month I want to encourage you all, if you are not already doing this, to begin a gratitude journal. I promise you the effects are transformational. And so here is a little tool that you can pick up in the bookstore to help you get started. Or just get out a notebook and start writing down every day things that you are grateful for. So this is our book of the month. The second reason I chose a journal is I couldn't make up my mind on one set of readings from one book. And so today's reading is actually coming from the book called The Science of Mind by Ernest Holmes, and I am reading from page 35. There is a universal mind, spirit, intelligence that is the origin of everything. It is first cause. It is God. This universal life and energy finds an outlet in and through all that is energized and through everything that lives. There is one life back of everything that lives. There is one energy back of all that is energized. This energy is in everything. There is one spirit back of all expression. That is the meaning of the mystical saying, "In God we live and move and have our being." There is spirit, this invisible cause, and nothing, out of which all things are to be made. Now, spirit plus nothing equals spirit only. Hence, there is one original cause and nothing out of which we are made. In other words, we are made from this thing. That is why we are called the children of God. We now know that this is what we are because we could not be anything else. But we do not know how much of this we are. When we see it as it is, then we shall see ourselves as we are. We can only see God by looking at God through our own eyes. Hence, we shall find a better God when we shall have arrived at a higher standard for us. I'm going to read through today's affirmation once, and then I'll invite you to join me. The fullness of life is mine. I give thanks for every appearance, every condition in my life, for I walk in the perfect faith, acceptance, and realization that life is good. I live in the vision of an ever greater tomorrow and know with an ever more grateful heart that heaven is at hand right now, and so it is. Please stand and join me with conviction. The fullness of life is mine. I give thanks for every appearance, every condition in my life, for I walk in the perfect faith, acceptance, and realization that life is good. I live in the vision of an ever greater tomorrow and know with an ever more grateful heart that heaven is at hand right now. And so it is. Thank you, Eric Tingstad. So grateful to have you with us today. I want to invite you to just take a breath and rest for a moment in gratitude for what you just heard. And the sublime beauty, the ease and the grace of the notes just washing over us. And just allow a sense of gratitude to well up from deep within your being for the practice and the mastery and for the end result beauty that we get to experience this morning. How does that feel? Open your eyes. How does that feel to just rest in gratitude for something that has been given? Isn't that rich? Aren't we blessed? Let's try another little experiment. I invite you to close your eyes again. And imagine that we live in a world in which there is no such thing as gratitude. We have no language for thank you. We have no cultural practice of giving thanks. It simply does not exist. There is not even an awareness of this thing called gratitude in the world in which we live. Imagine that for a moment. Imagine yourself going through your daily life in this world that is empty of gratitude. And open your eyes. And how does that feel? Like the whole energy of the room kind of went down, yeah? I can tell you how it felt up here. It felt kind of dark. I see somebody's going. It feels dark and empty to imagine that we might live in a world with no gratitude. And yet, it really is one of those things that we take for granted sometimes, I think. Sometimes we forget to be grateful for the beauty and the bounty of our daily life and for every moment of our lives. You see, gratitude, if you look it up in the dictionary, it says that gratitude is a quality of being thankful. It is a willingness, a readiness to show appreciation. And the Latin root word is gratia. It's probably pronounced gratia in Latin. And it means favor, to favor. And it means pleasing. See, when something is in favor, it's pleasing, right? So gratus, the Latin word gratus means pleasing. And all of these words, think about words like grace, grateful, gratitude, gratify, gratuity. All of those things carry this context of thanks and favor and gratitude and a willingness to be in appreciation for what is happening around us. What a beautiful, beautiful practice it is to be living a life of gratitude. And yet we so often forget. Plato told us that a grateful mind is a great mind that attracts to it great things. And that is so in line with our teaching, isn't it? We talk about our consciousness is cause, our minds cause, our thinking, our habits, our ways of being in the world cause us to attract to us our experience of life. What kind of a life do you think you're going to attract if you cultivate a grateful mind? And how much time do we spend cultivating an irritated mind? And how much time do we practice cultivating, a gossipy mind? But what if we just gave thanks? What if we just lived a life of gratitude? And then gratitude becomes a causative force for good, not just in our lives, but in the lives of everyone we touch, because our lives are better, and they see our example, and they're like, I want some of that. What's she doing that is giving her that experience of life? And the world becomes a better place, and so we want to cultivate this attitude of gratitude, this willingness to live from a place of knowing that God is good and all is well. In fact, all things begin and end with God. Today's message is actually called Get Grateful for God. Because I think that is one of the things, we just forget that we are living, moving, breathing, as the reading said, and as the Bible tells us, the Apostle Paul, we are living, moving, breathing, having our being in something greater than we are, an energy, a life, an essence. And how beautiful is that? And then I get all worried about, oh gosh, are these shoes okay? Am I going to be, oh man, I have this cold and I don't feel very, and I forget that I'm having my beingness in something that is so vast and so big and so spacious and so amazing that I can't even conceive of it. And I'm pretty smart. You're pretty smart too, right? And yet this is so far beyond us. It is beyond our conception. All we can do is cultivate a mind that is willing to see as much of it as we possibly can. It is the alpha, the Omega, the beginning, the end. And you heard in today's reading, the energetic from which all life springs. It is an essence. There is no spirit and. Spirit plus nothing equals spirit. It's math. And if spirit plus nothing equals spirit, see, infinity, if God is infinite, then by definition there can be nothing outside of it. And are you somewhere? Yes, you are. So you must be in it. You must be alive with it. Here's another definition from the glossary in this textbook for God. God, the first cause, the great I am, the unborn one, the uncreated, the absolute or unconditioned, the one and only, spirit, the creative energy, which is the cause of all visible things, love, wisdom, intelligence, power, substance, mind, the truth which is real, the principle which is dependable. It's a lot of words, isn't it? And yet we have to put, because it is so far beyond us, it really is not definable. What we can do is kind of poke around its nature and the ideas and think and consider and do our spiritual practice and study and grow in our awareness of it. And that is the best we can do to conceive something that is beyond our conception. And so we wrestle with it and we play with it and we toy with it. Then we talk to people about it and we take classes and we study and we grow and we give thanks for it because gratitude is a causative factor. And as we give thanks for our growing understanding of the infinite, our understanding of the infinite grows. Praise God. I've been wanting to understand God for about 60 years now. I might get there. Maybe. But the fact is, I am on a lifetime journey of understanding. And so are you. And what else would we be doing than attempting to understand the nature of the thing from which we spring, the thing that is the source of all we see and all we are? What else would we be doing? And it's so interesting to me because it's all anybody has ever been doing. Here's some from the Vedic tradition, thousands of years old. From the Vedic tradition, the teaching is the Om that is full, the divine is full. The Om that is full, the divine is full. This is full. The creation is full. Do you get the idea here? The Om, the infinite that is full. The creation, the body that is full. It's the same thing. The whole is in the part, and the part is in the whole. The Upanishads teach what is here is there, and what is there is here. Just other ways of poking around this notion of what is God. God is that which is here, and God is that which is there. And God is that which is here, and God is that which is there. It is within, it is without, it is above, it is below, it is all around. The Buddhist tradition teaches samsara and nirvana. Samsara is the world of duality, our human world of duality. Me and them, the world of separation, God and me, you and I, separate. This is samsara. And nirvana is the world of peace, of freedom, of oneness and unity. It is a consciousness of unity. And the Buddhists teach that samsara is nirvana and nirvana is samsara. It's the same thing. In the human realm, they look different. It looks like we're separate, doesn't it? Samsara, it looks like we're separate. But the fact is, there's only one thing happening. Nirvana is what is happening. God is here, God is there. The Om that is full, this is full. One energy, one life. In God, we live and move and breathe and have our being. So we're not the only ones who teach this stuff, is my point. Right? How long humans have been on this journey toward the greater understanding of the infinite, that from which we spring, the divine, the divinity that we are. And it seems like there's something in ourselves that is just bubbling with a need to know. And that's what we're doing here this morning. It's what we're doing here every day. Sometimes we forget that's what we're doing here. Right? Do you ever forget that you're on a spiritual path? and then something happens. And a lot of times when we forget, something happens to call us back that maybe is kind of uncomfortable. Make sense? And then we realize that maybe we're not all that. That maybe there is something greater than we are that we can turn to and rely on when life gets uncomfortable. That's the way it has happened for me anyway. So we have so many ways to think about this thing called God. And I want to give you some new ways today to consider what God might be for you. And for guidance, I'm actually going to turn back to the Christian tradition and the Gospels and some of the teachings of the great master teacher, Jesus. I want to talk about a few parables. So a parable is a very short story, yes? It's a very short story that has some deeper meaning. And it was a lovely tradition. It was a lovely way that Jesus often taught. And he would tell these little brief little stories, and people would go, huh? Only some people went, ah. And later on, at one time, there was a conversation in which the disciples said to Jesus, how come you're telling these stories? And Jesus says to them, because you must have the ears to hear. You will get the deeper understanding if you are ready to get the deeper understanding. And if you're not, it's just a nice little story. Do you see, it's kind of like the secret teaching. And isn't that life? No matter what you're doing in your life, stuff is happening and we're learning things, and we will get the deeper understanding if we're ready to get the deeper understanding. And if we're not ready to get the deeper understanding, we'll just keep repeating the same patterns and go. And so I want to talk just very, very briefly about a couple of Jesus's parables. One of them that I really love is he says the kingdom of heaven, and think about this. When we're talking about the kingdom of heaven, we're talking about consciousness. We're talking about the kingdom of heaven is a consciousness, a way of being. The kingdom of heaven is essentially the energetic, the life that we call God. And he says the kingdom of heaven is like the woman who put yeast into the flour, 3 measures of flour. She put a little bit of yeast into 3 measures of flour, a lot of flour. And that's kind of the end of the story. And I'm like, yeah? And so we have to ponder and think and wonder, what is the master teacher telling me? What happens when I put a little bit of yeast into a whole lot of flour? And he says, and the whole becomes leavened. Doesn't take so much God to get going with this stuff, does it? A little tiny bit of willingness to open our hearts and minds to a greater idea. Opens our hearts and minds to a greater idea. I'm so grateful for that story. Here's another one that I really appreciate. He says, the kingdom of heaven, the kingdom of consciousness, God is like the man who found treasure in a field. He sells all he has and buys the field. Now, I don't know, there's several ways you can look at this. Really, you sell everything to buy a field? Come on. Or you could say, wow, that's kind of a rude guy. He found a treasure, he hid it, he didn't tell anybody, and then he sold all of his stuff and he bought a field. You could kind of make it up that way too, couldn't you? Or you could think, you know what? He found a treasure. He found the mind and the heart and the consciousness of God. And he gave up everything to get more. He gave up everything to know it more deeply. He gave up everything to live the life that God would have him live more fully. What a beautiful story. The kingdom of heaven, God is like that. The man who found a pearl of great value and he sold everything in order to buy it. He gave everything to know God more fully. So you see how these parables have a story, but then there is a meaning. And so I thought, these are really interesting stories, and they're a little dated. This was, a couple thousand years ago. Maybe we need to think of a new parable, a way of thinking about God that might give us greater insight so that we can practice cultivating a greater sense of gratitude for knowing more and more of God. And so I put before you today that God is like a bar of soap. Here it is in the box. It's easy to have around, stacks nicely, sits in my cupboard, doesn't make a mess. God is like a bar of soap in the box. Challenge is, in the box, it's not very useful, is it? But dang, it stacks nicely in my cupboard. God is like unto a bar of soap. I can open this box and I can put this bar of soap on display in my bathroom. Have you ever seen that? You go into somebody's bathroom, they have a little dish with some pretty little soaps in it. Maybe you have that in your house. And it sits on my counter and it sure looks good. In fact, sometimes they're quite beautiful, those little displays, and sometimes they smell real pretty. God looks real good that way, doesn't it? But heaven forbid you should use it. You might ruin the soap, right? And what often happens, I remember this when I was a kid in my house. My mom used to, she'd like redo the bathroom, or she would get on this little kick to redo things. And then, 8 months later, it's covered with dust, right? And everything, because, we had busy lives. And so God is like unto the bar of soap that sits out and looks good, but maybe gets kind of dusty and isn't really very useful, is it? Now, God could be like unto a bar of soap in the shower. A little more useful, isn't it? Cleansing, healing, making me new. But I got to tell you something about this God. It is very, very slippery. I have chased this God around the bottom of the shower more than once. And maybe you have too. And so sometimes I just put God in the soap dish in the shower, and it just sits there. And I'm going to use little pump stuff so I don't have to chase around. And 2 years later, that bar of soap is still sitting there in the soap dish, but what's happening to it? It's melting away into nothing, isn't it? Little by little, every time a little bit of moisture gets going in that shower, it melts away. It softens. It becomes mushy. And it still is cleansing, isn't it? We could still use it if we but would. It's there. It's available. It's waiting. Melting away. God is like unto a bar of soap. Do you have the ears to hear? It's a nice story, isn't it? You could go home and tell that around the dinner table tonight. Or you can wrestle with it. You can think about it. You can ponder on it. You can discuss it with your trusted friends and advisors. You can come to one of our groups and discuss it some more. You can pray on it. You can meditate on it. You can contemplate it. And you could see, what is the deeper meaning for me? And begin to open your heart to a greater sense of appreciation and gratitude for the infinite mind and heart of God that is your source, your Alpha, your Omega, that to which you will, that from which you have come, and that to which you will return. I want to tell you that gratitude is curative. It is healing. There are health-giving life effects. People who cultivate an attitude of gratitude in their lives are healthier. There's all kind of science about it. Go home and Google it. You can find it. I'm not going to share it with you. But you will be healed physically, mentally, emotionally by the conscious journey toward appreciation for the infinite. The conscious journey toward saying yes to understanding that from which we come, appreciating it more deeply, opening your heart to living a life of gratitude, not just for God, because we begin to understand that it's all God. We begin to understand that this is God, and I'm God, and the chair is God, and you're God, and the tough times are God, and the light times are God, and it's all God. And as I cultivate an attitude of gratitude, as I remember that there is no separation, that there is no God, and there is samsara is nirvana, nirvana is samsara, the Om that is full is where I am. As I begin to capture that essence, that energy as my way of being, I am grateful for everything. I become a source for infinite good in the world by cultivating this attitude of appreciation for all things. So let's turn within and practice a little bit. How about? What I invite you to do is just find that place where you feel comfortable and supported by your chair, and bring to mind again something you are deeply, richly grateful for. And as you breathe, you relax more fully into your chair. You relax more fully into the awareness that you are infinitely supported by something greater than you are. And with each breath, you allow this awareness of this thing, a person, an institution, an event, something you are deeply and richly grateful for. You allow this awareness to expand in your consciousness. And you feel your heart begin to open. Your whole being softens and awakens and becomes more alert. And you allow this deep appreciation to permeate every cell in your body. To permeate every edge and moment and corner of your consciousness. And you become alive with gratitude. And as you hold this image of this person or thing for which you are so grateful, you hold it in your mind. And you embody this sense of deep gratitude. Say to yourself, God is like that. God is just exactly like that. And your soul opens and your heart opens with a new awareness of the infinity of being and your oneness, your right place in the order of things. And you simply breathe and allow. As you bring to mind another thing, person, event for which you are deeply grateful, again, simply open and say yes to a deeper and richer experience of the infinite as this thing. And you remind yourself, God is like that. God is that. And you begin to realize that this practice is your practice. And I just invite you to be willing to say yes to walking a life of gratitude. A life of seeing through the veil into the oneness of all things and giving rich thanks for your ever-expanding awareness of God the Good. simply saying yes to the perfection and the allness of life, making itself known as you, as all of your experience, and as of all that you see. And so simply say yes. Yes to good. Yes to God. Yes to walking a life of gratitude. And I do give thanks for this community. I give thanks for those who have said yes to participating in this community, to growing and deepening in spirit. I give thanks for the willing instrument of spirit we are. I give thanks that God is good and all is well. And I close this message with a grateful heart. And so it is. Amen.